Good morning and welcome to Barry's Garden. Today we have the honor of speaking with two people who are in very different parts of the world. Cindy Glass and Teresa Wallstra, as well as Teresa's guide, Cynthia, have collaborated on a book called Beloved Friend, and we are joining together in one room, although we're in very different rooms, to celebrate and to talk about Beloved Friend, the book. Welcome, ladies, and Cynthia.
Thank you very much, Barry.
Thank you, Barry. Good to be with you again.
Thank you. Teresa, I wonder if you'd like to just, I know that Cynthia would like to join us, so if you would like to just open in prayer and allow Cynthia to speak with us.
All right, will do. Thanks, Barry. Great Spirit, we ask for your protection as we join with Spirit in the world of Spirit at this time. We ask that you would open our minds and our hearts and our lives to the possibilities and the inspiration that will come through. And we ask that you will bless what we are doing here. Amen. So we greet you from Spirit and welcome you to this time of joining together.
Welcome and thank you. So tell me about Beloved Friend. Beloved Friend is a book and the two of you collaborated. How did that happen? Cindy, would you like to start?
Sure. I met Teresa and Cynthia in February of 2015. And I had just gone through a tumultuous divorce, and it was still something that was particularly difficult for myself and my family. And when I met Teresa, and I worked with Teresa, I was having quite regular readings and discussions with Cynthia about where to go, what to do, and how to go about doing it, because I was in a really, really difficult situation. And so basically, Teresa and I chatted about it after that and said, listen, we need to document this. We need to document these discussions that I've had with Cynthia and the decisions that are made as a result of doing that and the results of those decisions. So, and to make a link between working with a spirit guide or spirit guides and making decisions in your actual physical life and how that panned out. And so we decided to write the book together, and it worked out way better than we thought. And we learned a great deal while writing the book as well.
Thank you. Cynthia, would you like to come in and just explain how that worked from your point of view? It must have been quite fun.
Well, yes, we would say any opportunity to bring a greater understanding into the earthly plane is our purpose. And so we work with our Midi, who can be something of a bubblehead, but we love her even as something of the bubblehead. And we would say that whilst Midis are very often very stubborn, they need to be, because they will encounter a great deal of opposition. So we who are spirit guides who work with Midis have learned a great deal of patience in order to actually work with the Midis. But this book was certainly not a difficult book to do. Our Midi allowed us easily to step in to actually create whatever was required. And as both the Lady Cindy and our Midi will tell you, it was not difficult to write. It wrote itself. And it certainly brought what we would say a great deal of understanding to those who can then follow a story, and made it much easier than what would have been perhaps just technical information from spirit guides. Yes?
Thank you. I'm quite curious then about the process of a book and understanding that possibly the book reaches the people that it's meant to reach.
Yes. That is very true. It will always go out to those it is intended to help with. And we would say to you that the circumstances of this book are interesting, because when the Lady Cindy first presented to us, there was a sense of anxiety about her. because working with guides in this way, where we are channeled through the body, the voice, and the entity of a medium, sometimes brings a sense of, well, it is disconcerting, it brings anxiety. And we would say this book will help others to understand that guides work in a gentle way. Yes, there are times when we will perhaps frighten just a little, bring enough anxiety to help you make a change, but at a level that is perhaps incomprehensible, guides will work through mediums to actually bring information to individuals by working in collaboration with the guides who work and walk with that individual. So there will always be just enough information given in just the right way to encourage the individual to actually follow perhaps a new course or a slightly different path. And so that is an interesting collaboration, because we in spirit are collaborating with a great deal of other guides. Yes?
That sounds like such a fascinating process. And you speak about helping people to make choices and decisions that they might not otherwise really think about. And I'd like to just take it back to Cindy here, because Cindy, as you took decisions with the guidance of the guides, and possibly that might have given you the courage to do things that you might not otherwise have done or even thought about. How did that transpire for you? How did that work out?
Well, the very, very first thing that happened was in that very first meeting that I had with Teresa and Cynthia, I was instructed, really, because that's the only way I can possibly put it, in the most gentle way, that I need to move. And I need to literally leave my life behind in Port Elizabeth in South Africa and move to a different province. And it was for the safety of myself and my children. And it meant literally turning my back on the life that I already knew and had known for many years. And I ended up making that decision. I spoke to Cynthia in June of 2015, I moved. And I literally left that life behind. And then it was tough. I lost everything. And I had to restart a life in a whole new province. Now, looking back on that whole process, if I had not been brave enough to do that, nothing of where I'm at now would have actually occurred in my life. We've even had to move again when I've had more conversations with Cynthia since then, where she told me again in 2018, January 2018, you will move again. And I cried a lot because I thought I just can't do this. And now we are in New Zealand. So what I'm trying to say is that sometimes what seems like the most irrational suggestion actually turns out to be what you really need to do. But it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of trust. And I think that those are big lessons that I learned along the way, is to really trust with all my heart.
That's a huge lesson, and that's actually very hard to do. So how do you know within yourself whether what you're being advised to do is in fact the right thing, or whether somebody else is just making this up? How do you connect with that truth?
Oh, absolutely. And that is a very real consideration, especially when working with an outside source, and it's not really an outside source, but you know what I'm saying, when you're working with someone different and is told to make such a big decision, it felt right. It felt like I'd been told something that I would never have considered until it was said to me, and it felt more and more right as June approached, and suddenly it all just fell into place. So all the impossible things which I thought were impossible to happen and fall into place for that move to take place did fall into place, as Cynthia suggested that it would, and it just felt right. I think in your heart of hearts, deep down inside of yourself, you will know if something doesn't feel right, it is not. If it feels right, if it feels comfortable, and if it, even though you may be nervous or afraid or anxious about it, but it feels like the right thing, that is where courage comes into play. And that is where I did take the courage to make those moves, because it felt like the right thing to do. And it was the right thing to do at the end of the day.
But somehow Cynthia must have been able to touch that chord, that deepest part of you, and that really spoke to a deep truth that you may not always have been aware of. Cynthia, I'd like you to speak into that, if you may.
Well, Lady Berry, we would say that Lady Cindy was perhaps one of the easier individuals to work with, because she opened herself to the possibilities and she allowed the change to happen without actually being enforced on her. We would say that there are many times we give advice to individuals and they choose not to follow the advice. Our Meidi being a very good example of that. And then the choice is made for them. And that choice becomes a much more difficult one to work with if you simply do not choose to change. But we would also say to you that knowing what we do from spirit world and working in collaboration with the guides who walk with the individual, we know what buttons we can press. We know how far we can push them. Our Meidi often complains that we are doing too much and pushing too hard, and that we shouldn't say things that we do. But we are fully aware of how that will impact on the life of another. And we are fully aware, in collaboration with their guides, as to what the end effect will be. And that is something that should be remembered, because you may not see the end outcome. And those who work as mediums, bringing information from their spirit guides, should be constantly reminded of the fact that the long-term view is something that you cannot see with the client who comes to you. And they will never be taken to a place that is not anticipated. They will never be led in such a way that they cannot cope with the outcome. And the outcome may only be visible in 10, 20 years down the line. But decisions, any changes in your life are difficult. The earthly life is not an easy one. We acknowledge that. We say that time and time again. And if you choose an easy path, you will learn very little or nothing at all. So in choosing to make those difficult choices, more learning comes. And it doesn't mean you will suddenly have an easy life. It simply means that your life is moving to the path of your own choosing. Before you incarnated into the world, you chose to learn. And we who are your spirit guides will help you find the path to fulfill what is your chosen learning, so that you can learn not only for yourself, but for your group spirit also. Because it must always be remembered that you take the learning from this earthly plane, not only for yourself, but also for those who are your group spirit, those who are considered to be perhaps a family in spirit, not by blood in the earthly sense, but because you are linked in energy in spirit world. Yes?
Thank you. And that also brings me to the question of timing. So the timing of Cindy coming into contact with Teresa and meeting Cynthia was very, very relevant in her life and in her context. The timing of this book is very relevant, Beloved Friend. So you've written Beloved Friend, and now all of a sudden, a year or two after it's been published, we land in a time where the entire world is gripped in a pandemic. And Beloved Friend is out there and connecting with people who are searching for some kind of guidance. So please to speak to me about the timing. It seems to me that it's never just one thing. It's all linked together. and how can Beloved Friend help people now?
Well, we would say if you look at it from the point of fear, because this is all fear-based. This may be linking itself to a virus, but the virus is of no great consequence. The fear, that is what is driving your world. And Lady Cindy can speak of the fear that she underwent. And in truth, every decision that was made by overcoming fear. And if you look at the guidance that she was given, which is evident in the book because the Lady Cindy has quoted from actual guidance recorded and given to her, you will see that all of that guidance is there to help her overcome her fear. Fear is the most debilitating of all energies in your world. And at the present time, with this present pandemic around your earth plane, it is not the virus, it is the fear that must be addressed. Yes?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Cindy, do you have any last comments that you would like to make?
Yes, I really think that the book has many, many themes. Fear being one of the biggest ones, learning to trust that you are not alone, and really understanding and knowing that no matter what challenges you face in your path, you are not alone in this. And that timing is always perfect. When you look back at all your experiences, where you are now, it has always been in perfect timing. And I can say from my experience, having made the big choices that I did with the guidance of Cynthia, you know, it took a lot of knowing that it would be okay. And let me tell you, I felt that fear, I really did. But it was about rising above it despite the challenges. And we are here, we are still going, and you know, things are just improving for us, and it's just amazing. But the book has many themes. It is not just for people who are afraid. It's for people who want to move forward. It's for people who feel a little bit alone. It is for people who feel like they just need something more. They need to understand life better. So it is for everyone, really. And the book will go to people who need it the most first. So yeah, I really do think that I learned a great deal from it. As Teresa and I, as we were editing and working on the book, we just kept saying to each other, oh my word, what we have learned in writing this book. Imagine what you would learn in reading it.
How blessed you are to have had such powerful and excellent guidance.
Absolutely. It was amazing.
Thank you, Cindy. Cynthia, do you have any last word for us?
Well, we would say in going forward, it is a good idea to have an understanding that you are surrounded by spirit guides. And we say again, imagine if you had walking with you every day an entourage of between 50 and 60 individuals whose focus was only on you, whatever that focus may be, seeing to your needs and wants. And that would make you feel more confident. It would make your life more easy. And we would say to you, you have that. You have an entourage of 50 or 60 guides walking with you constantly. They are there to see to your every need. If there is only one thing that you can get from reading this book, and that is the understanding that you have guides who walk with you, then you will have achieved a great deal. But there are many snippets of wonderful knowledge in that book that can be used to increase your understanding of the connection between you as an individual and the spirit world. So we would recommend that it is something that you consider reading.
Thank you, Cynthia. May I ask for Teresa to come back to us for a brief comment?
All right, we leave you with our unconditional love. Hi, Barry.
Welcome back, Teresa, and thank you so much for that. Teresa, we just wanted to wrap up, and And if you could possibly just give us a brief comment about the book and your role in it.
It was an interesting book. I mean, I really, in many ways, I'm just a typist, but the learning was intense, you know, and I'm sure that Cindy feels the same way. When I pick up the book today, I learn so much from it, you know. People think that as a medium, I have access to all this information, which is true, but we all have access to this information. You know, I always say to people, how did they choose me? And I'm sure that they would have gone, who's the person who makes the most mistakes, is most stubborn, most difficult? That's her. Okay, we'll have her. Because it certainly wasn't because I'm a good person or a nice person, or a, you know, it isn't based on niceness in any way. I'm not like that. You know, I'm just not like that. For me, the interesting thing is that there's so much to learn out of that book. I actually keep the book next to my bed, and I'm not drawn to it all the time, but every now and then I'm drawn to it. And then I will open it at a passage and I will read it, and it will speak to me at that time of my life. And, you know, that for me is powerful. I mean, I was the channel through which the book came. I don't remember so much of it, and I've read it several times. I mean, I think Cindy and I have read it probably, to edit it, we read it about 4 or 5 times initially. And we read it time and time again. And for me, it's a very powerful work at a level that reaches the ordinary people in the street, you know. You don't have to have a spiritual knowledge. I loved it. I loved it.
How do we get it?
Amazon Kindle, you can get it on Kindle. It's available as Kindle book. We'll give you the details, and then you can put it into a pinned post, Berry. That might be the best way.
Super. And of course, there is, Teresa, your email address is on this video, and people will be able to simply email you if they have any trouble finding it.
Yes. In South Africa, we have actual printed copies. But I believe that you can get the I don't know, I think there's print on demand. Cindy, am I correct?
Yeah, you get print on demand elsewhere. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much, everybody. It's been really wonderful to spend this time with you, and I really appreciate the time, the input, the wisdom. It's been wonderful. Thank you for spending time in Berry's garden.
Thank you, Berry.
Thank you, Berry. Always good to be with you, and nice to have been with you again, Cindy.
Oh, it's great to see both of you. It's really wonderful.